That would be.
To get support from them, because why
Yeah.
are they suddenly changing their mind after all these years?
Yeah, I didn't know that there was any kind of movement in Birmingham to get the fluoride out. So I would love to see the documentation for that, the reports. If you would perhaps tell Stephen or me afterwards. Yes.
My sister-in-law lives very near Birmingham, and a particular village which is fluoridated. She had her hip replaced at 45. But that's not the question that I wanted to
Okay.
tackle. I read that book by Christopher Bryson, The Fluoride Deception.
Yes.
And a particularly nasty image, it stays in my mind. The workers that were working with fluoride, the bones used to grow out of the tops of their hands.
Exotosis, yeah.
And what concerns me is I've had 5 friends who've had to have their heels operated on, their shoulders, their elbows, where bone is growing out. And I wondered if you could link that with fluoride in the water.
Well, it certainly would be a good study to do. The lovely English fast bowler, what's his name, the all-rounder guy, Flintoff. Freddie Flintoff had exotosis removed from his feet, so I very rushed to find out which town he grew up in, but it wasn't Birmingham. So, yeah, again, it's anecdotal, but we need to put that on a scientific level. Yes. Oh, no, I just want to get people who haven't asked a question. Yes. You asked one. Ah, okay. We're going to let him get away with that? All right. Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's in countries like India and China, they tend to talk about fluorosis. They see it as a continuum. If you are heavily exposed to fluorosis, it will first show up as dental fluorosis. If you continue to live in the same community, then you've got a high risk that then you will manifest skeletal fluorosis. It takes longer to build up in the bones and create these effects than in the enamel. But yes, in these countries too, they are finding that before you get the skeletal fluorosis, there are soft tissue effects. And that's very, very important because they've always assumed that fluoride would only affect the hard tissues and not the soft tissues. But that's breaking down, and for a variety of reasons, I think. Yes?
Joseph Borkin, in his book, The Crimes of I.G. Farben, he talks about Hitler putting...
Oh, don't go there. Please don't do that. The only way we can lose this damn issue now, the only way we can lose, we have them in a corner. This book has put them in a corner. From a scientific point of view, they can't argue very well that it's effective, and they're going to have trouble arguing that it's safe. They have been brilliant in the past to distract people from the issue. And so in the United States, we still have newspaper correspondents who think they're being awfully funny by talking about Dr. Strangelove and how this mad general thought it was a communist conspiracy. And so you still to this day, people say, oh, when you talk about fluoridation, oh, you're just one of these conspiracy theorists. You're just one of these, yeah, you're crazy. You flat earth society, So don't give them any ammunition that we are conspiracy theorists, because we'll lose again. And they've got the money, they've got the access to public relations, using that to make us look stupid. We cringe. Those of us who are serious about the science on this issue absolutely cringe when anybody talks about dumbing down the population, reducing world population, or goes into this Hitler used it in concentration camps or Stalin or what have you. Incidentally, the historical evidence of that is so weak. No historian would be able to use that fact. You'd have to have several sources to verify that. And my view is it's very unlikely, because the Nazis had absolutely no compunction about talking about all the wonderful human experiments that they were doing. If they came up with something as powerful as spreading a little bit of pixie dust in the water and being able to control whole populations, they would have been glad to talk about it. Also, my wife actually approached the Wiesenthal organization to see if they had any information on this. None. They could not find anything. If the Wiesenthal organization couldn't find it, I mean, they're the guys that hunt down the Nazi criminals. So didn't mean to be rude to you, but please, let's talk about the science. Yes?
The only thing I would say, just a comment really, I appreciate what you're saying, but at the same time, you have to look at the way the world is and figure that sometimes there's a sinister reason for doing things, and that's being realistic. It doesn't mean you have to use that as an argument. You have to be scientific about your argument,
Yes.
but that doesn't stop us from having something at the back of our minds
Mm-hmm.
when we think there could be another motive for the reason for doing things.
Yes, but okay, there may be sinister moments, sinister reasons from the dozen or so people that orchestrate this. The people at the top may have sinister motives. I think the people that we have to reach, the thousands and thousands of dentists and doctors and scientists who right now think that fluoridation is a good idea, they do not have sinister motivations. So when you use these kind of arguments about Nazis and so on, they feel extremely insulted. They're very sensitive to it. Yeah. They believe that what they're doing is good for children, and especially good for poor children. And they feel that they're doing good. And so they're offended when you start throwing, or somebody throws in these accusations. And I think even from the ones at the top, I think it's much more likely that they want this to continue because their whole prestige, their whole careers have been dedicated to it, and in the sense they don't want to find out that they're wrong. They're protecting this position, and then that's as far as the individuals, and as far as the bureaucracies are concerned, it's protecting their credibility, which is the thing which I think ultimately drives this. But I could be wrong. And when you get to this area, the last chapter in the book deals with motivations, and we say there are more questions about motivations than answers in this chapter. Yes?
Now, you say that it lowers the IQ in children.
I'm not saying it does. I'm saying there's 23 studies which have shown that association.
If that were the case,
Yes.
wouldn't that, in effect, dumb people down? I mean, it's a terminology you use. It depends
Yeah.
on how you phrase it. But the end effect, if you lower somebody's IQ, that in a sense, it affects your mental capacity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you might not like the word dumbing down, but the effects.
Yeah. I mean, unintended consequences as opposed to a deliberate plan. It's an unintended consequence if that's the case. But I think this lowering of IQ. What?
The end effect would be the same.
Yeah, but I think it's very different if it's a plan, something that's planned and motivated, and something that is an unintended consequence. Also, I don't think you should be carried away with this. I don't think you're not sort of creating imbeciles here. You're possibly shifting the IQ over by a very small IQ, maybe 1 IQ point, and that would increase the number of children with mentally handicapped, and it would reduce the number of geniuses in your society. But
Wasn't there a previous study where they said 5 to 10 points in one study?
yeah, well, 5 to 10 IQ, but that was at 1.9 parts per million.
Right.
No, that was when they were looking at the community, which was 2.5 to 4.5 parts per million. So you're right. So some of those kids were getting 4.5 parts per million. Again, we don't know the dose, so you have to be careful.
What about adults, the cumulative effect in adults?
Well, the IQ effects are very much when you're young. I mean, that's the scary thing, is if any reduction, I think someone else mentioned it, any reduction you get in the early years perpetuates it, it continues. You're always going against it. But
So if you start in later life, you drink it for 10 years, no effect, or unlikely to affect you in any way?
well, I don't know. We can't even get them to repeat the studies done on children. We can't get them to, no. Okay, let's do one more. We've only got 15 minutes left. Is there a bylaw which says we have to be up by 4, or just an inclination?
I can give you just after 4, but I do want
Okay.
people to ask.
Okay, yes?
There do seem to be bodies, though, that very actively promote fluoridation,
Yes,
like the British
Fluoridation Society.
Fluoridation Society. Do you know anything about them?
I've met Michael Lennon. I've heard him in talk. I don't know. I don't want to be personal. I don't. You know, I find it difficult that he's. Well, maybe we shouldn't find it difficult that he's convinced himself that this is okay and that there's no. I find it, I don't know. I can't work him out. I can't work him out. But what I do know is, as a dentist, and he shouldn't have the influence that he has. I mean, he's pally-pally with Peterson, who's the oral health director for the World Health Organization. They write papers together, they go to conferences together, and they're part and parcel. Can you believe this? There was a meeting in Geneva a couple of years ago with the FDI, the Federal Dentaire International, the World Dental Federation, which is industry supported. You had the the International Association for Dental Research, which is a research body, and the World Health Organization. And they came up with a collective statement that access to fluoride should be considered a basic human right. And this was all part of a parcel of promoting fluoridation where it isn't fluoridated, or if it wasn't relevant, then fluoridated toothpaste. So one or the other. But fluoride, access to fluoride should be considered a basic human right. Incredible. I'm going on. Quick, is it relevant to the health stuff? Okay.
Very quick comment, not questions, but in terms of, I totally understand what you say about the need for the science and the evidence has got to be there.
Yeah.
For the whole debate to be, clear. But also, you can't help but question, if these effects are happening, like, especially in the areas of mental health and thyroid, stuff like that, then the pharmaceutical industry is actually going to make a lot of money creating new drugs to treat these things. So,
Yeah, that's an unexpected bonus, maybe. Okay. Fluoride in the bone. All the members of the committee agreed that on certain conditions fluoride weakened the bone. This was actually observed in the first study of fluoridation. We've already referred to this with the menstruation business. They found a higher incidence of cortical bone defects in the children in the fluoridated community compared to the non-fluoridated community, about 2 to 1. The cortical bone is the outside layer of the bone. That's the cortical. The inside is trabecular bone, which is weight supporting. The outside layer of the bone is to protect against fracture. So when they saw more defects, it should have raised the question, are there increased fracture rates in children, young children in fluoridated community? Didn't do it.
Did they control for other variables as well?
Good question. I can't remember just what they control. There were different levels of calcium, there are different mineral levels in the water, and they have been criticized for not controlling enough. So it is a good.
How about income?
Not sure. All these trials were badly controlled. Anyway, Alas and Herrera in Mexico looked at an area of high natural fluoride, 1.5 to 5.5 parts per million, and they found that the severity of dental fluorosis went up with the incidence of bone fractures, or the other way around. As the severity of dental fluorosis increased from none to very mild to moderate to severe, the fracture rates in children and in adults increased. And a pretty strong relationship there. Now that methodology for that study has been critiqued by opponents of promoters of fluoridation. However, what I find is striking is 2 things. One, they haven't attempted to reproduce it, and why not? And number 2, which is far more shocking, is that this, if nothing else, this is the way we should be studying health effects in children, because we have a non-invasive biomarker for fluoride exposure. So everything that people think might be related to this, lowered IQ, early onset of puberty, bone fractures, whatever, you name it, attention deficit syndrome, whatever, should be looked in large numbers as a function of this severity of dental fluorosis. So, you know, you could have thousands of children, divide them up into mild, moderate, severe fluorosis, and have a look at what you want to look at. And the beauty of this is it's not ecological. It's not based upon where they are. It doesn't matter where the fluoride is